For 14 years, my life revolved around the quiet machinery of the company. I knew every server, every process, and every financial artery that fed its success. My desk wasn't decorated with trophies or slogans. My victories lived in uptime percentages, satisfied clients, and revenue streams that never missed a deadline. I didn't chase applause. I built credibility instead. My colleagues understood something the spreadsheets never captured. Systems didn't run because they existed. They ran because someone cared enough to make them bulletproof. Then one Monday morning, everything shifted. A new boss arrived, carrying the kind of confidence that wasn't earned but purchased with tuition fees. He shook hands like he was sealing mergers and spoke like someone who read leadership quotes without ever leading anyone. He had been in the building less than 72 hours when he scheduled an emergency leadership meeting. Rumors spread faster than memos. No one knew what to expect, but everyone sensed turbulence. The conference room smelled of coffee and apprehension. Executives filed in, eyes glued to their tablets, pretending composure. I took my usual seat near the corner, ready to take notes, unaware my career trajectory would be redrawn before the meeting concluded. The projector hummed, displaying charts and numbers I recognized instantly: production figures, maintenance budgets, customer acquisition lines. My work lived inside every dataset on that screen. Then he clicked to a slide titled Cost Optimization Strategy. My name appeared, bold and underlined, next to my salary. He smiled, not the kind of smile that communicates camaraderie, but the one that precedes judgment. With a casual tone, he announced to the room that my compensation was a waste of resources. His words sliced through the silence, and suddenly every sound in the room stopped. No keyboard tapping, no shifting chairs, no coughs. Only breathing and disbelief. He talked as though expertise were an outdated appliance. He compared my salary to the cost of hiring 2 fresh graduates who could replace outdated methods with innovative thinking. He had never met me before that morning, yet he spoke like someone who had audited my worth. He didn't understand that innovation without foundation is chaos, and systems without stewardship are liabilities waiting to implode. As he continued his monologue, I scanned the room. Some executives stared at the table like it held answers. Others looked at me with the quiet sympathy reserved for funerals. No one intervened. No one challenged him. They acted as though experience expired like yogurt. He clicked through slides filled with buzzwords: synergy, lean process, digital refresh, none of which held the weight of a single day spent fixing a production halt at midnight. My pulse didn't rise. My pride didn't fracture. Instead, something inside me grew calm. I realized I didn't need to justify my existence. People who understand value don't need explanations. People who don't understand value can't be convinced. I closed my notebook slowly, not as an act of surrender, but as a verdict. Chairs creaked as heads turned. He mistook my composure for fear. Without raising my voice, I stood. The gesture was so quiet it felt louder than any argument. I didn't throw accusations. I didn't ask for respect. I took the one thing they underestimated: my presence. When I walked out, it wasn't an exit. It was extraction. They believed I abandoned a meeting. They never realized I had withdrawn the keystone that held their operation together. By the time I pushed the conference room door open, the company's future had already changed. They just hadn't figured it out yet. The first day after I left, nothing looked unusual. Machines hummed, screens glowed, and the corridors carried their usual polite tension. The new boss strutted around with the confidence of someone who believed a system ran because buttons existed. He told HR to post a vacancy immediately, specifying a candidate with modern energy, not old-school habits. His tone suggested he thought competence could be purchased like office furniture. He believed replacing me was as easy as signing a contract. His assumption was the first of many mistakes. By the second day, the illusion began to bend. The automated reports that summarized daily revenue didn't arrive. At first, they blamed an email issue. Then IT searched for scripts they couldn't find. Someone confidently suggested restoring a backup, only to realize the backup protocol required manual initiation. That protocol wasn't documented on any server. It lived in one place, my head. The IT manager tried to call me. I let the phone ring. They wanted results without respect. Results were no longer part of the package. On day 3, the cracks turned into fractures. Customer dashboards froze mid-operation during peak usage. Clients flooded the support lines demanding answers. The help desk escalated tickets at a pace no one could manage. The team scrambled, rebooting servers, refreshing caches, reinstalling modules. Each attempt made the situation worse. One executive murmured that this level of disruption had never occurred under my watch. The comment silenced the room. Reality doesn't shout. It taps gently until people notice the door they ignored was holding the roof. The new boss, red-faced and visibly shaken, barked orders with theatrical authority. He demanded updates every 20 minutes and threatened disciplinary action for delays. What he didn't understand was simple: shouting doesn't replace knowledge. No one could trace the supplier integration workflow I built years earlier. They didn't realize the integration required scheduled synchronization with external inventory servers. When those connections failed, penalties activated automatically. That day, the company lost 6 figures before lunch. Finance panicked. Legal prepared statements. Procurement wanted explanations. The new boss blamed the tools. The tools blamed the absence of the person who understood them. By day 4, staff morale collapsed. Meetings ran from sunrise to sunset. Someone finally asked the question no one wanted to voice aloud: where are the system's credentials? Eyes darted nervously. The IT director searched through documentation shelves like a man looking for oxygen. There was nothing. I never hid information. I simply carried it through years of decisions, failures, victories, and refinements. Institutional knowledge doesn't sit in folders. It resides in the people who built its foundation. They dismissed the foundation, expecting the walls to remain standing. By day 5, resumes started circulating privately. Senior engineers updated LinkedIn profiles. Sales teams avoided major contracts. HR whispered that the replacement they hired for me didn't understand half the terminology printed on their onboarding packet. Clients escalated demands. One threatened litigation if outages continued. Investors requested emergency reports, but no one could produce them. Without my infrastructure scripts, the financial dashboards were nothing more than meaningless numbers waiting for context. By day 6, panic became the only operational language. The new boss stopped giving speeches and started pacing like a man searching for a lifeboat on a sinking ship. He finally understood something veteran workers learn through experience. Systems are not machines, they are negotiations between knowledge and time. Remove one and the other becomes a detonator. By day 7, they no longer wondered whether I had been overpaid. They wondered how the company survived without recognizing the person who carried its nervous system. They didn't know I wasn't expensive. I was irreplaceable. When the crisis reached a point where guessing no longer worked, senior management ordered an internal audit. They believed it would be a simple exercise: retrieve a few passwords, restore a couple of configurations, and move forward as if nothing had happened. After all, in their minds, I was just an employee, not the architect of an entire ecosystem. They underestimated something far more dangerous than my absence: the complexity of the world I had maintained. The audit team began by reviewing documented procedures. They expected polished manuals and tidy indexes. Instead, they found a skeleton of outdated instructions written before half the current systems even existed. What they didn't understand was that documentation becomes obsolete the moment a system evolves, and ours had evolved continuously for 14 years. Each adaptation had been crafted to address real-time demands, emergencies, and client-specific requirements. None of that could be captured in a binder or a flowchart. My work wasn't a checklist, it was a living organism. By midweek, the team was drowning. They opened folders only to discover layers upon layers of configurations, scripts, and triggers interconnected like a nervous system. Every function they attempted to restore led them to another dependency, and each dependency pointed to decisions made years ago, based not on theory, but on battles fought against vendors, outages, compliance frameworks, and customer whims. They found patches I created at 3 in the morning after a supplier changed an API without warning. They found workarounds built during emergencies when the company couldn't afford to halt production. These weren't random choices, they were scars earned through survival. The auditors tried isolating core processes, thinking they could simplify the network. They quickly realized the company's operations weren't linear, they were circular. One failure triggered another, and the absence of a single decision-maker turned routine adjustments into catastrophes. The new boss, who once mocked experience as an outdated commodity, sat quietly in the corner while the audit team explained a truth he had never considered. Systems don't run because they exist. They run because someone understands their temperament. By day 4, the mood shifted from frustration to fear. The more they analyzed, the clearer the pattern became. I had not built a system. I had built a landscape, an ecosystem that required cultivation. They found automated safeguards that prevented cascading failures only when activated manually. They discovered integration bridges that communicated with external databases no one else remembered contracting. One auditor whispered that replacing my knowledge would take years, not weeks. Everyone else pretended not to hear him. The worst discovery arrived when they tried to extract financial pipelines. Those pipelines touched every department: sales, procurement, logistics, compliance. Each connection operated with conditions tailored to the company's operational quirks. Without oversight, they didn't function. The auditors realized what management refused to accept. Complexity is not a flaw, it is the price of growth. And the cost of neglecting those who manage complexity is ruin. By day 5, tension consumed the building. Executives who once nodded politely in meetings now avoided eye contact, haunted by a simple realization: they had traded a guardian for an illusion of efficiency. Spreadsheets couldn't replicate intuition. Algorithms couldn't anticipate human error. No degree could simulate 14 years of lived context. The audit concluded with a report no one wanted to sign. It didn't blame sabotage. It didn't imply negligence. It revealed something more unsettling. The company had been balanced on knowledge, and they had removed the person holding that balance. The garden hadn't died. It had mutated into something hostile, roots tangled, branches unsupported, vines choking the structure meant to sustain them. They expected to find passwords. They found the truth instead. The board convened on a Thursday morning, expecting to review quarterly projections. Instead, they were handed incomplete revenue reports fragmented like broken glass. Columns were missing. Totals didn't add up. Profit forecasts displayed error messages instead of numbers. What was once a seamless financial pipeline had become a maze of red flags. Eyes narrowed. Conversations dropped. Something was terribly wrong. The investors who usually skimmed reports now read every line twice, sensing a crack in the foundation they thought unshakable. The new boss entered the boardroom visibly strained. His swagger had evaporated. Gone were the confident strides and rehearsed business jargon. He carried a stack of printouts, flipping through them as if hoping the pages would suddenly rearrange into good news. When questions arose, he wrapped himself in excuses. He blamed outdated systems. He blamed legacy architecture. He blamed tools he barely understood. Every sentence sounded like an attempt to outrun a truth he refused to confront. The CFO sat across from him, watching quietly, like a man counting the seconds before an explosion. When the boss finished his monologue, the CFO opened his laptop and projected 14 years of operational records onto the screen. The graphs were smooth, predictable, almost boring, until a single vertical line appeared like a scar. The day I walked out, revenue stability plummeted immediately afterward. Complaints increased. Service delays multiplied. Investors shifted in their seats. Numbers don't lie. They expose. One board member asked who had overseen the systems before the disruption. Someone muttered my name, almost reluctantly, as if speaking it would summon consequences. The board requested details. The CFO obliged. He explained how I had built, refined, and maintained the infrastructure silently, consistently, without applause or politics. He described late-night recoveries, vendor disputes resolved before dawn, and compliance fires extinguished before anyone smelled smoke. He didn't embellish. He didn't dramatize. He simply presented evidence of invisible competence. The room shifted. The boss, who once called me overpaid, now looked like a gambler holding losing cards. His narrative cracked. The CFO clicked to the next slide, listing every change initiated under the new boss: hiring freezes, budget cuts, misplaced priorities, and the fateful public humiliation that drove me to leave. The board asked one question with chilling simplicity: why was our most critical operational asset pushed out? Silence replaced bravado. The boss tried to salvage dignity, calling my departure an emotional overreaction. The CFO countered with facts. He explained that institutional knowledge is not emotional, it's structural. Remove it, and everything dependent on it collapses. He introduced terms the board rarely used: indispensable human knowledge, structural dependency, operational fragility, continuity gaps. Words once reserved for risk assessments now defined their leadership blunder. The older board members, seasoned enough to know the cost of arrogance, leaned forward. They remembered industries destroyed because leaders replaced wisdom with trend-chasing impatience. One of them said something that froze the room: we paid him a salary. He gave us continuity. That wasn't compensation, it was insurance. No one laughed. No one disagreed. Real fear began circulating, fear not of failure, but of accountability. Investors had already noticed declining performance. Competitors were whispering. The market smelled vulnerability. The board understood what the boss didn't: leadership doesn't reduce cost by removing pillars. It reduces cost by strengthening them. The boss tried one final defense: he was expensive. The CFO didn't flinch. He replied, compared to what? The cost of losing 61% of our revenue? The cost of rebuilding a decade of knowledge? The cost of convincing clients we still know what we're doing? The debate ended there. In that moment, the board learned the lesson every mature audience knows instinctively: cheap leadership is the most expensive decision a company can make. The first customer complaint arrived before breakfast on Monday. A logistics partner reported that order confirmations were missing, leaving trucks loaded with products that couldn't leave the warehouse. The support team assumed it was a minor technical glitch and promised a quick fix. But when the clock struck noon and nothing had improved, irritation turned into agitation. By mid-afternoon, inboxes overflowed with messages marked urgent. The tone shifted from polite inquiry to contractual demand. Customers didn't care about internal turmoil. They cared about commitments. And commitments were no longer being met. On Tuesday, larger clients joined the storm. A multinational corporation called to report that their dashboards displayed incomplete metrics, preventing them from tracking shipments worth millions. The account manager tried to pacify them by reciting phrases from a crisis handbook. It didn't work. Corporate clients don't negotiate with guesswork. They wanted answers, not apologies. Executives scrambled into war rooms, attaching sticky notes to whiteboards like battlefield markers. But notes don't solve problems. People do. And the person who once solved the problems wasn't there. The new boss stepped forward, eager to assert authority. He scheduled conference calls with key customers and spoke in polished corporate language. He used words like alignment, scalability, and accelerated issue resolution. His vocabulary was impressive, but his comprehension was not. Clients didn't want buzzwords. They wanted stability. When he assured them solutions were underway, they asked for specifics, timelines, procedures, escalation paths. Suddenly, his rehearsed confidence crumbled. He had no answers because he didn't understand the questions. By Wednesday, the largest client invoked a clause in their contract: failure to comply with service-level agreements triggered immediate penalties. 6 figures vanished in an instant. The legal department panicked. They attempted to negotiate leniency, but the client refused. They reminded the company that for 14 years, there had never been a breach. Whatever had changed was recent and preventable. Then came the question that cut deeper than any financial loss: where is the man who used to run this? The room fell silent. The account manager hesitated, unsure how to phrase the truth without sounding incompetent. Eventually, someone whispered, "He's no longer with us." The client didn't respond with sympathy. They responded with disbelief. They weren't loyal to a brand name, a logo, or a promise crafted during a marketing retreat. They were loyal to results. And the person who delivered those results had been dismissed as an expense. Thursday brought humiliation. A long-term partner, one who had championed the company during tough seasons, demanded immediate access to internal logs to verify data integrity. They no longer trusted the reports provided. Distrust spreads like smoke. Once inhaled, it lingers. Other customers heard whispers about system failures and service delays. Calls multiplied. Some asked for copies of old service contracts. Others requested migration support to competitors. For the first time in the company's history, clients were preparing exit plans. The new boss tried to regain control. He offered discounts, extended bonus features, promised updates he couldn't deliver. But seasoned clients recognized desperation. They weren't interested in discounts on broken promises. They wanted reliability, and reliability had walked out the door when arrogance stood at the head of the conference table. By Friday, a statement circulated among the remaining clients, written by a procurement director known for blunt communication. It read, "A system is only as strong as the person who understands it." The company had always believed customers chose them for price advantage or brand reputation. The truth was far more sobering. Customers stayed because someone competent ensured they never felt the weight of failure. The company had removed that competence. Clients didn't wait for the collapse. They anticipated it and acted accordingly. Trust had never belonged to the company. It belonged to the person they replaced. The first real collapse began in silence. Systems don't scream when they break, they stall. Without my oversight, automated backups stopped running. No one noticed at first because people assume technology maintains itself. But technology obeys only one law: neglect invites disaster. When the first backup window passed without execution, the system logged a warning. No one read it. The second window failed. Another warning appeared. Still ignored. On the third failure, the system skipped a synchronization step critical to financial reconciliation. That wasn't a warning. That was an unmarked cliff. By the end of the week, data pipelines carrying transactions jammed like arteries clogged without circulation. Numbers that once flowed seamlessly between departments now sat stranded, waiting for scripts that no longer triggered. Payment confirmations froze. Customer orders sat unpaid, not because clients refused to pay, but because the portal that processed payments couldn't route the data. Money was no longer moving. The company wasn't losing potential profit, it was losing actual revenue. Developers rushed in like firefighters without hoses. Each patch they deployed unraveled another dependency. They plugged one hole only to create 3 more. At one point, a senior engineer rebooted a core server to refresh processes. Instead, he wiped cached routing data that took years to calibrate. When customer transactions returned online, the system didn't recognize them. Payments were rejected. Orders were canceled. Angry customers didn't demand discounts. They demanded accountability. Peak hours became war zones. Customer service agents couldn't keep up. The new boss, once proud of his digital age vocabulary, paced the hallways clutching his phone like a lifeline. Every call was another fire. Every email was a reminder of consequences he never anticipated. He thought leadership was about cutting costs and flexing authority. He now understood leadership was about continuity, something he had severed without hesitation. On day 10, the CFO presented a report titled Operational Losses. The first page showed a steep downward line as if revenue had stepped off a building. The second page revealed something more terrifying, projected future losses that grew each hour the systems remained unstable. The boardroom, once a place of confident predictions, now felt like a bunker awaiting impact. By day 13, external auditors arrived, not to help, but to investigate. They suspected fraud or data manipulation. The new boss had no explanations. He tried blaming vendors, contracts, outdated tools, unreliable staff, anything except his own judgment. But the truth was simple. He removed the only person capable of managing a system built through years of experience. Expertise isn't installed like software. It is cultivated. He had uprooted the gardener and expected the garden to bloom. On day 15, competitors smelled blood. They launched targeted campaigns offering migration incentives. They promised peace of mind, stable infrastructure, and expertise, the things my former company once provided effortlessly. Customers defected. Partners hesitated. Prospects withdrew. The brand, once respected, now resembled a cautionary tale in progress. By day 19, the headline hit the industry's news feeds. Company suffers 61% revenue loss after internal leadership shakeup. Articles dissected every detail. Commenters speculated. Analysts mocked. Competitors celebrated publicly with thinly veiled statements about the importance of valuing operational continuity. Behind the scenes, investors demanded someone to blame. Shareholders didn't ask questions. They demanded consequences. Their patience was gone. Their confidence was dead. The collapse wasn't dramatic. It was surgical. Piece by piece, decision by decision, ignorance dismantled what competence once protected. They thought they had replaced a salary. Instead, they triggered a structural implosion. They didn't just lose money. They lost trust, credibility, and the illusion that leadership without understanding can survive the real world. The first call came on a quiet Saturday morning. My phone buzzed with a number I recognized: HR. Their tone was polite, almost cheerful, as if extending an invitation rather than acknowledging a crisis. They said the company valued my contribution and wanted to explore opportunities for collaboration. I let them talk. Their words felt like recycled lines from an onboarding brochure, not the voice of an organization collapsing under the weight of its own decisions. I thanked them for reaching out and declined. I thought that would end it. I was wrong. By Monday, the calls multiplied. The tone changed. Politeness gave way to urgency. This time it wasn't HR. It was directors, department heads, people who once couldn't bother to learn my name correctly. They spoke about critical vulnerabilities, service breakdowns, and escalating client concerns. They used phrases like, "We need you back," and "Only you understand these systems." Their shift in language wasn't admiration. It was survival instinct. For years, they treated my work as invisible. Now they wanted the invisible to save them. When I refused again, the offers began. Salaries doubled overnight, then tripled. They proposed flexible hours, leadership titles, even stock options. It was almost comical. None of those things existed when respect was optional. Each offer revealed the flaw that destroyed them. They believed loyalty could be purchased after dignity had been discarded. They assumed money was the missing ingredient. They forgot that money had never been the reason I stayed. On Wednesday, the apology came. Not spoken, but structured, like a speech someone rehearsed in front of a mirror. The new boss called personally, voice trembling, sentences breaking. He acknowledged communication missteps and misjudgments. He claimed his earlier comments were meant to inspire modernization, not diminish expertise. He didn't apologize for humiliating me. He apologized for the consequences of doing it. That distinction mattered. I remembered the boardroom where he projected my salary like a crime scene. I remembered the executives who said nothing while he dismissed 14 years of sweat, outages, saved accounts, and sleepless nights. Respect evaporates quickly, but memory survives. I wasn't angry. Anger is emotional. What I felt was clarity, the kind that arrives when illusions burn away. They wanted my skills without acknowledging the price of acquiring them. Every decision I ever made was forged in pressure, systems crashing at midnight, customers on the brink of legal retaliation, servers overheating during holidays, executives panicking while I worked alone. I didn't master those systems by reading manuals. I mastered them by bleeding for them. They wanted the product, not the journey. Thursday brought desperation. A senior board member called, voice weary, tone stripped of ego. He admitted the truth the company avoided from day one. They didn't lose technology. They lost knowledge. He offered autonomy, authority, and full control of the infrastructure. For a moment, I considered it, not out of desire, but curiosity. Then he asked the question that sealed their fate. How quickly can you bring things back to normal? Normal. As if trust were a software update. Respect, once broken, doesn't reboot. It doesn't reinstall. It doesn't patch. It has no restore point. They wanted me to reverse consequences their arrogance authored. They wanted shortcuts to wisdom earned through years of failure and recovery. They wanted miracles without responsibility. Friday morning, I sent a single reply. I don't return to places that try to fix problems they created by ignoring solutions already in front of them. The apology arrived too late. I wasn't leaving again. I had already left.